of that. We're recording. Say all the terrible things now. Okay, well, let me find that bug and we can talk about it a bit until such time as people have other things they want to talk about. Like I said, this was about frameworks, and it's not something I've like deeply dug into. It is bug 30250. Configure when to apply framework defaults when cataloging. And then a follow-up bug, 34993, where it seems that things broke again. They got good and then they got bad again. I'm going to share my screen. Framework doesn't load in existing records or duplicate as new. Okay. Thank you for that, Emily. Let me grab a site to play with this on. Has anybody run into this? So this looks like, is anybody particularly using frameworks to insert default values into records that they create?
No, but I'd like to, so I'd like to see this fixed.
Sure, yeah. I'm going to start a sandbox because we'll probably wish we had one, and it'll take itself a little while.
We are using frameworks, but I need to learn a lot about exactly how we're using them. But the basic gist of it is that we have centralized cataloging. So the library staff out at the libraries use the fast add framework, and they need to be able to create the short records and then edit those short records and attach items to those short records. But then once the central office overlays those, it needs to not allow them to touch it anymore, basically. And we have some other, so this bug may be of interest to us is what I'm trying to say, but I'm still learning a lot about it.
Well, until my sandbox gets itself spun up, which usually takes a bit, I'll go over to our live koha. And we don't do much with frameworks, so I think I can pretty safely just fiddle with one of these. I'm going to grab the books framework.
I'm looking on the koha-US demo site, Andrew, and you do have an account there, and it is a system administrator. If you'd rather screw up the demo site.
I think the more relevant thing is that Lisa would rather I screw up the demo site. Is that just linked on? See, I have no idea what my login is. I'm sure you told me at some point.
I don't remember. I don't think I'm the one that set you up, but that's your username. I have no idea what your password is here. But the site address for anybody that's interested.
It's a fine learning opportunity.
Is there in the chat, staff.koha-us.org. And there's no email address in here, Andrew. Otherwise, I would be able to set you up with a new password.
It remembered my password. Thank you, computer. Oh, your buttons are so cool. I have been here, but I don't. Yeah, I have too many kohas in the world. But yeah, let's break something that won't make me get yelled at later. All right, so the bug says if I am to set my apply framework default system preference, just select all, and then when I make a edit as new, I no longer get the text. So So I'm going to go into, I'll use the books framework again. I'm going to go into the mark structure so I can see what's actually in the subfields. And let's just find something that has a default value in it, or make something have one. Oh, we'll do it in the 500 just so it's not in a terribly important field in case someone's watching. Who cares? So if I, in my 500A, put something in the default value here, something, and save that, then when I make a new record in that framework, got something in the 500A. Cool beans. Now I'm going to check that system reference. And this is not a system preference I've particularly touched. It's new, I think. So it asks, when do we apply those values? Right now it's set to in cataloging all. I'm going to say, always put those in. This record that doesn't currently have any 500 at all, if I edit as new duplicate, based on what I said in my system preference. Oh, I have to stick it in the books framework though. Hold on. My starting record has to be in the correct framework. Which should have put that note in, because my system preference does say, when I change the framework, apply default values, and it did not. I was like, cranky about a lot of other things. Oh. Line 42B. Exciting. Y'all have a lot of exciting required fields in your framework. How many of those have I cleared? Okay. So we still don't have a 500A. We are in the books framework. I duplicate that. Still not getting my 500A. Yeah. What were my other options I said in there? Cataloging new, changing the framework, edit as new, and importing a record. Well, I think we could see that definitely two of those don't happen. If I do new from Z3950 into the books framework. Do something that we'll find something. But see, that was bad because that's going to find everything. Sure. Doesn't really matter, right? I just wanted to get. That worked. So Lauren asked if we could talk about this bug. We can definitely confirm that it happens. I don't have any sense of a fix or a workaround here. But if anybody else does, I would be happy to entertain ideas. That to me seems like a level of koha's just not doing what it's supposed to do, and some developer needs to write some code to make it do that. So I can comment on the bug and say, yep, I couldn't confirm, but
I'm looking through, I just looked up every bug related to apply framework defaults, and there's like 6 or 7 of them.
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like it was a new feature that it looks like that's a new feature that worked for one version.
Well,
and then
and
everybody forgot it was there or something. I don't know.
you mean the system preference to select when things get applied?
Yeah, it looks like that has not been part of Koha for very long.
Yeah, that tracks.
And so it looks like that the system preference was added, and then the next version, everything related to it broke.
That's unfortunate. You do occasionally run into these situations where, like, if Koha gives you a new feature, it behooves you a little bit to watch every bug related to that feature for a period of time to make sure nobody's writing any code that has forgotten to take your new toy into account. Definitely spent some time on bugs being an annoying squeaky wheel of, well, whatever you write here needs to respect this new functionality. Please don't break my thing. Does anybody else have framework thoughts or questions while we're frameworking?
I mentioned this at the conference, that it would be nice if there was more than one fast add framework. The nice thing about the fast add framework is that it is available to staff that don't necessarily have other cataloging permissions. And so in our system, we use it for libraries that where this circulation staff adds temporary records for interlibrary loans, but then we also have staff that use it when they add records for when they add item records to magazines.
Sure.
And so the one fast add framework is kind of doing 2 things in our system. It's not being used as a fast add framework at all.
So you don't really need it to tie into like that trigger of you scanned a barcode, Koha doesn't know.
It'd be nice if we had a process for that too. So it'd really be nice if we had 3 different frameworks that did 3 different things, instead of trying to force one framework to do 3 different things. Because invariably what happens is somebody gets trained on how to add interlibrary loan records, and then all of those interlibrary loan records have a magazine, end up with a magazine item type.
Yeah.
And then all the people that are cataloging magazines, there'll always be somebody out there that all of a sudden you've got all of these magazines that have an interlibrary loan item type and things like that. It'd be nice if I could just have one that said, this is the one to use for ILLs, and you limit it to those item types, and make it so that it does that without people having to fight to shoehorn that in. So
so you know how, right?
I guess is my question. Like we're doing the same thing, but why couldn't I just make a framework for ILL and then tie that in?
Because at some of the libraries, some of the bigger libraries, they have staff that can access the fast add framework, but they can't access the other cataloging features.
So that sounds like maybe we want, so like you've got the system or the permissions that allow you to define which item fields you get to edit if you have restricted item edit permissions. Maybe they could get a similar tiered framework permission.
Yeah, it'd be nice if there was a way to limit that. That's really what it'd be nice, is if there was a way to say, these staff members have access to these frameworks.
All right.
Because right now,
yeah. Okay.
No matter how much training you do, people are always going to, if you're using a thing that was meant to do one thing and you're using it to do 2 or 3 different things, it's always going to get screwed up.
Yeah, I had to delete a material specified note of fast add item from a couple hundred periodicals just last week. So I know what you mean. Seeing nobody else bouncing up and down excited to talk about frameworks. A couple people came in here, so just pausing in case they're excited about frameworks. Let's pivot to SQL. Does anybody have any reports they've been working on? I totally do have a question for you all, so I'm just going to dive in. Last week, I tried to write a report that told me out of all of the checkouts in a date range, what percentage of them got returned at a branch other than the branch at which they were checked out. This seems like it should exist or should be pretty possible, but for the life of me, I can't figure out a good way to like tie a checkout to a check-in. The issues table doesn't know this. It records where a checkout happened and when it happened, and attaches to that the time at which it was checked in, but not the where it was checked in.
Yeah, I think I saw your question on Slack, and it'd be nice. I got this exact same issue or a similar issue with the statistics table. It records issues and returns, but there's no way to connect the two to say that this is the, it'd be nice if there was issues has a number in it, doesn't it? Isn't there?
Yeah. So if the issue ID in any way tied to the branch at which the check-in happened.
Yeah, it'd be nice if the issue ID was part of the was one of the things that was moved into statistics.
Yeah. Action
that would
logs.
solve your problem right there.
Yeah. Well, and there's a bug to add a return branch field to the issues table, or old issues, and that would solve it. Just seems like there should be a data linkage there somewhere.
Well, there's the item record, right? So could you see that the item had been returned, and then check the item's holding branch to know where it was returned to? Because the item's holding branch is going to update on check-in.
Yes.
So then you be able to maybe know that it was checked into that branch.
Yeah, but then there's nothing there that tells me where it got checked out from, because there's nothing really that tells me what the holding branch was previously.
You'd have to look at 2 rows from the issues table.
So
So you get one where it's the checkout and one where it's the check-in with the same barcode number. You take the location, I forget what the field is called, where the checkout happened, and then it's not the cleanest, but I feel like maybe there's a way to get it.
I did manage. So the statistics table knows where both things happened, but doesn't include the issue ID, so there's no hard and fast link there. You can find the item number and where it got checked out, and then you can find the next place it got checked in.
You could do like a subquery on the statistics table for like the first check-in that happened after the timestamp of the checkout.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's kind of where I was going too, is and you might even be able to look at, is this check-in between, because you want to make sure it hasn't been checked out since then. And so you'd have to make sure it's not including a checkout after that as well.
Mm.
I did monkey around with the statistics table to the point where I got, for each item number, a list of of pairs basically of check out and then check in. So this like this branch and then that branch, and it as a like concatenated list that felt like somehow I could probably shove that into like a JSON function and then query that, but then that got too fancy. That went beyond my understanding of anything.
One other table maybe you could look at is the branch transfers table, I think. So the branch transfers table is every single transfer. So if an item gets returned and checked in where does that count as a transfer?
It does not. It's just
Does
a
not.
change. It also isn't an item record edit. Like it doesn't go into the action logs as a change to the item, even though the item's branch has been changed. It
I
just
think you're gonna, if you want to do this, you're gonna end up having to look at statistics and old issues and connect them on the return date is a date time, and the statistics is gonna have a date time, and that's where you're gonna get the most bang for your buck in trying to figure that out.
this is all the surface of trying to figure out if floating is at all worthwhile or if we're doing it reasonably, or which is an unanswerable question as far as I can tell.
So what about the action logs? Because it does log the return, and you could tie the staff member's home branch to the return.
It logs the return, but it's still, and I suppose it logs the return with the item number, the patron's borrower number, and the staff member's borrower number. So I guess I could join those. Those are the item and the item number and the borrower number are going to be consistent because that doesn't get anonymized. Only goes back 180 days. My suspicion is that this is going to ultimately show me that pretty much everything gets returned to the branch where it got checked out. And so proving that within 180 days seems like probably enough to say, like, I bet this half a year wasn't a fluke. We all already feel like our patrons have one branch they go to all the time.
I mean, if you're trying to prove that, I mean, I'm looking at my branch transfer table and it's just full of return to home because we do have people not going to the same branches all the time. They're like 2 miles apart from each other. So stuff just flies all over the place in our system. But for me, it's full of return to home, which means they checked it in somewhere other than. So it's not like hard and fast numbers, but if you're looking for a feel, just looking at the branch transfers might give you what you need.
And our whole collection floats with like a very small number of like technology exclusions.
So you're just the opposite. We don't have anything floating.
Yeah, everything just
right now. Yeah,
just flops where it gets returned. And I don't think that's moving our collection around a lot, but it's proven really hard to know.
Yeah.
And you can't tell. So the holding branch keeps on changing.
Yeah.
The item. So I wonder if you could take like a different approach maybe and just like pull a bunch of data from the issues table, and then like for the item just kind of track the holding branch as it changes, and then you'll know like if the holding branch changes every time, it's getting checked in at a different library.
Yeah, I mean, heck, I could just like write a report that gives me count of items per branch and have Koha run it and save the results every day, and then query those results over time. I get frustrated that Koha's not great at that like historical data. There are questions like that where like, how have these things been changing over time? There's not a good way to after the fact say how often has this holding branch changed.
Maybe would that be something that's in the action logs? Because it's like updating the item record. So on anytime the item record gets updated, you would look at the logs there and see that the holding branch changed or something.
My memory is that circulation activity doesn't show up in the cataloging log. The koha records that a checkout happened, but not anything about what that checkout changed in the item record. Well, and actually, yeah, that was a deliberate choice because before that choice, lots of folks in larger systems didn't use the cataloging log because it was unusably flooded by 1,000 little item edits every time something got checked in or checked out.
Yeah, checking an item in made like I think it was 6 entries in the action logs, even if it wasn't checked out, even if it was just a browse. So, you know, a big library, you know, if in 2 minutes you can check in 100 items, you would create 600 lines in the action logs. It was ridiculous, and getting away from that makes the action logs a lot more usable.
That wasn't even that long ago, and I'd totally forgotten about it.
No, it was a lot. I remember it because
Yeah, it was a
we
big
had to
thing.
make decisions about turning things off and how long to keep action log data.
Oh, Mike says same thing when changing a hold priority. Yeah, I can see how that would really spam the logs. Well, thank you all for giving me a lot of fun floating things to think about.
I love to see your report when it's done.
Yeah. Let's see what I get. I managed to get something that kind of worked and would run very slowly for a month at a time. What did I even do for that? I can't remember. It was something really dumb. Like it was some bad, messy math. Oh, I took the old issues table and joined in checkouts from statistics based on the item number and the time, but not trusting Koha to exactly match the times because those timestamps are often off by like a second. I said I joined on the time, give or take 5 minutes on either side, which works, but was really slow. Like Koha did not like doing that. It didn't get to the point that Bywater yelled at me, but probably close to.
Before the account lines had before there was the account lines offsets, I had a report that would match things based on the times, and I think it was like 2,800 lines of SQL. It was the longest report I've ever written, and it was ridiculous, but it worked.
It does seem like there should be some way to tell the computer to please like do time plus or minus a couple seconds, and that's not a big deal. That's not resource intensive, right? But it doesn't seem to work that way.
I mean, you could truncate it to just the hour and minute and not second, or
How
the
about
date
that?
even,
But
if
you know
it's
what?
not like moving fast enough for that to be an issue.
And that would be mostly fine. You'd get the things that like it was one timestamp was 59 and the other was 00. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I just need that bug to push to put the return branch in the old issues table and then wait 3 years for data to develop.
Do a bug number
What
for
if you
that.
could just like pull like all your items, like let's say your current checkouts, just get where they were checked out from, and then wait like a month, and then just check those items and see where they are.
Yeah.
And then you can just compare two and be like, it's about like this.
That's not bad. Like that's probably exact enough for my purposes. Where did that bug go? Here it is, 33641. I'll put it in chat. We should record return branch in old checkouts. Oops, I just sent that to George. Sorry. Let me send that to everyone. Only George gets to see the bug.
I just added myself as a CC on it. So actually, no, I added koha-US as a CC on it. So
The more the merrier. Anybody else have fun or interesting or terrible reports they're working on? Has anyone stumbled on a bug that's keeping them up nights, worrying that their koha is going to catch on fire and fall in the swamp? Everyone's content.
Does anybody use the Lita app?
I haven't used it a ton. I haven't been thrilled with it for reasons that I can't like, I don't know. It just doesn't feel nice.
Well, we're struggling with we have OCLC Kapira as their mobile app, and since we migrated in February, trying to get it to display the availability of items the same way that Aspen does has been a little bit of a challenge. But now Kapira is actually working with us, so maybe we'll get it fixed faster. But I was trying to work with them about what responses are in the ILSDI web service, and then also found like we have Aspen also, so that's part of our particular case. Aspen has an API that has availability response in it, and it already calculated the availability the way that we want it to be, and it suppresses the items and everything. So trying to get them to maybe use that as an option. But yeah, we're just curious because we're basically we just got Aspen Lita set up just like last Friday for our library directors and library staff to kind of test and see, so they'll be able to compare the two apps and make a decision about which one they want to promote to the public. So just kind of seeing what people think about Aspen Lita. I've only used it literally this morning.
We're like working on getting it set up. We've been waiting for a little while for it to be done enough to be decent. Because less than a year ago, it basically didn't do anything other than browse the catalog. And like, it's just starting to get to the point where now we're starting to work on getting it actually set up for ourselves. So I can't offer any like user experience yet because we haven't put it out there for our customers yet. But just, you know, in maybe 6 months, check back again. That's probably too late for your decision-making process, but you know, also
yeah, we're kind of dealing with one of those.
A year ago, it like basically didn't even exist.
Yeah, we have like our contract is ending obviously with Kapira in November, I think, or the end of November. So, and we need to let the libraries try out Lita and see which way they want to go. I've only used it a little bit, and my experience, like, it's sort of works. It seems like it works so far. But it does seem a little bit buggy still to me. Like I've gotten a couple times where you just the screen loads blank and nothing loads, and then I have to. It's not a huge big deal, but I can see people are going to complain to me about it, obviously. But like you just have to close the app and reopen it, and then it loads sometimes. And also specifically, the old app had self-check, so we're gonna be I just looked a little bit into setting up that. It seems like it's not that hard to add the SIP credentials to all the libraries in Aspen, and then it will just then turn it on and it just works, I guess. So we'll be probably turning that on soon. We can maybe report back next meeting.
In-app checkout does sound cool. Like I see the appeal there. Sounds very futuristic.
Yeah,
Mike point-
certain libraries really liked it on our old app, on our Kapira app.
Mike pointed out in the chat that the Lita app is slow to load initially too, which has been my experience. When you open it up, it just kind of chugs for a little while. And it comes up and it's not like crazy slow to use.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that it launched without like search. I think that's maybe unfairly biased me against it because it does search now. Mike says he did a Sudoku puzzle while it loaded, but an easy one. It's not good when you measure your app load time in Sudoku puzzles.
Was that a 3x3, Mike, or 4x4?
Pardon me, I got a cat.
What is the stand? I haven't done Sudoku in a while.
Okay. Rebecca has a question in the chat, but is having audio issues. Wanted to ask the group a question about patron searching. We're having an issue finding accounts with punctuation in their surnames. Is there an open bug for issues with searching for users with hyphens, Smith Jones, or apostrophes in their last name, O'Brien? Anyone else experiencing this? Suggestions? I know there's a bug that's been active for searching for patrons with multiple names that I'm sure comes into this. It's all the question of whether patron searching should be a starts with or a keyword search.
Right.
Which-
I know a little bit about it. I'm going to try and find the bug number.
Yeah.
The issue is that somebody said, one of the libraries would like to be able to search. They said when you're searching for people by last name, you always want to do a starts with search. And so they changed the default search for searching, and not in all pages. If you go to patrons and there's that group of searches on the left-hand side, if you change that to to name or surname, then it switched the search type from contains to starts with. And then that opened up a whole rabbit hole of people not liking that change, because for a bunch, particularly for people in Europe, where many people, especially when they get married, they adopt their other family's last name, then you end up with all these people with two names. And so all of a sudden a search by starts with was not acceptable for those libraries. And they said all of the searches broke. And so there was some work done on that, and there's a system preference now to decide which kind of search you want. And I think that might be the issue that you're running into. But I don't remember the name of the system preference because there's a bazillion system preferences.
Default patron search method.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Rebecca does have that switched the way it should be for the search they're trying to do.
Yeah. So then as far as punctuation marks, I haven't heard anything about that issue.
I've seen similar bugs about similar issues in other types of searches, like a catalog search for a long time. If there was punctuation in the title, it wouldn't come up if you typed it with the punctuation. And that got fixed, I think, in 2211, like fairly recently. And there's another one that got fixed around the same time for like searching by phone number, where you could type it with or without the dashes, and it had to match exactly what was entered into the patron record. But then the bug fixed it so that if you typed it with dashes and the patron record had it without, or vice versa, that it would still figure it out. So maybe it's something similar to that also, just the handling of the punctuation itself.
I think we were when we first came on to Koha in their training, they recommended never to use punctuation in the Koha search, just to ignore it too. I'm not sure if that relates to looking up patrons though, or books.
A good question, Rebecca. Have you tried searching for like O'Brien, just typing O space Brien instead of O apostrophe Brien or something like that? Because I know that was the workaround for the catalog search before they fixed that one.
And I would
she said
expect catalog search and patron search to be pretty different generally. The patron search isn't using any sort of search engine, so it can't do as much fancy processing of what your search is. There's a bug out there somewhere to make patron search use Elastic, which would make it like much more configurable, but not 100% convinced that that configuration capability would be good for us.
I tested also without the apostrophe, just doing O'Brien with no space, and that found people that have the apostrophe or no apostrophe.
I'm glad you have an immediate searching solution there, Rebecca. Yeah, the bug I put, I don't know that it directly impacts you, but it's sort of tangential and is sort of a moving target. No, I saw Christopher Brandon filed a bug or comment on a bug somewhere that suggested a different change, and I can't find that one either. If you care about patron searching, you might spend a little time on Bugzilla looking for bugs and making your opinions known. What else are folks up to? What's going on in library land? What are you administering today?
I am looking at ways of getting, I'm writing some jQuery to make it so that the only type of, with the advance notice and the item due notice, forcing the digest mode. So that there's no way you cannot select digest mode if you want email or text for those two types of messages.
That sounds handy.
So every now, I explain to people over and over again, this is what digest mode does. You want digest mode because if somebody checks out 70 books, they don't want 70 emails saying that they've got 70 books due today. But people, and no matter how many times I explain that to people, they still will not choose digest, the digest mode. And so I've written some jQuery that if you select email for either of those two notices, it forces the digest only, or if you select text, it forces digest only, or if you select both and there's no way to turn it off. Yeah, and I figure it will also cut down on the number of emails. That was the issue that we had last week, is somebody had like 84 items checked out, and so they got a advance notice that said 84 advance notices, and their ISP blocked our email as the outgoing email as spam, and then it was a pain in the ass to get that taken care of. So
that sounds like a handy thing. Like similarly, I kind of feel like everybody wants digest on those.
I don't know why there is even an option to not have it digested. It seems to me like it's the single email is an outdated concept, and it should just, Koha shouldn't even offer that, is the way I feel about it. And there is work, there are a group of us that funded a development to make the hold available notice digestible. And so that's in progress. And I think I haven't looked at the ticket on that, but I think that it's, or Rebecca's holding up her hand. Oh, clapping, okay. I know that Clams is involved in that and Ajax is involved in that. I don't remember who all is involved in that development, but that's progressing nicely.
Yeah, that's a bug that totally makes sense to me. Like, it's not a thing. We're so small, we don't need it, but I can definitely see
Yeah,
libraries where you've got people with like 50 holds coming in a day. That's kind of
yeah,
bonkers.
when you've got a wide-ranging courier system and maybe you know, it was worse when I was in Idaho because we would have people out in these tiny communities in the middle of nowhere in the Latah County Library District. Beauville, if you've never been to Beauville, Idaho, there's no reason to go there. It's the kind of town where the only growth industry is jury duty. So it's a tiny little town and people move there because they can homeschool their kids and nobody's going to give them a second thought. They can homeschool their kids and have a gun range and burn crosses and all that kind of stuff, and people just go, oh, those are the Joneses. And so you have these homeschool families that they will order, you know, like 60 or 70 things for homeschooling because they don't want to drive all the way, you know, 40 miles to town to browse through things. They will just they will go into the catalog and they will put a hold on everything and they'll get it all shipped there. And then they'll go, well, okay, out of these 70 items that are here, I want these 4 and you can ship the rest back, which is a huge pain in the butt. But that means that they get, you know, 70, 80, 90 items in one courier delivery. And so they get 70, 80, 90 hold available notices all at once.
Yeah, I take it back. Those people don't need digest. That's the price they pay for this excellent service you're providing them.
So that's the kind of issue that, you know, you might not have if you're a single library. It's unusual for, I think, for 70 items to get checked in all at once in a single library. But when you've got a courier delivery where that library only got courier delivery twice a week, so there would be a lot of stuff and it would all be for that one family. And then it would all get shipped back on the next trip.
I encourage you to file a bug suggesting the option to make digesting mandatory in addition to jQuerying it.
Yeah. I think there might, well, I don't know.
It seems likely, honestly.
It's been a while since I've checked.
That would be a nice system preference.
Yeah.
Or even, I don't know if there's any advantage at all to having single, so maybe just get rid of it entirely.
There's probably somebody out there who really wants them single.
I have an example of something that, like, with the digest that is, I feel like the library staff are always asking about is, like, we have certain items that have like a pickup restriction. So like a hotspot, for example, you have to pick it up at the library that loans it. So then you have patrons going to not their library to pick up the hotspot, and then like their digests coming from their patron home library, and they're like, well, I never checked out a hotspot from you. So then it confuses the library staff and the patrons. But at the same time, if it's a digest, it has to be coming from the patron's home library. Otherwise, they wouldn't be all able to come on one, all their checkouts wouldn't be able to be on one reminder or whatever. So it's kind of like a catch-22 situation where you need to have one location if it's going to be the patron home library to be the digest, or are you going to get multiple digests if you use multiple libraries? Kind of have to be figured that out. I don't know.
The advanced notices cron job does have a digest per branch option that might solve that for you. I haven't played with it.
That's the other kind of area of the system, I guess, that is tough to get like visibility into, because you can't see how it's configured. So you just have to like to open the ticket and then see, and then it's kind of hard to know for sure 100% what's happening. So that's a struggle, I guess, we're having.
One thing you can do to that end, Brendan, is you can, if you ask, if you're a Bywater customer and you ask for a copy of your cron tab text, they'll give it to you.
That's what I just asked for. I asked for a summary of the cron jobs, but they were so hopefully we'll get that soon and can see what our options are and how exactly our thing is. Because I'm in the situation where like we get a report about why did this notice go out, and then I'm like, we use Google SMTP, so then I try to like look in the Koha in the notices tab, and then also search for that in our SMTP server and try to figure it out, and it's like it's not the easiest thing to try to figure out exactly what's happening. And I feel like kind of can be a time sink if you're looking up every notice that ever come out of Koha.
So yeah, if any of you are asking Bywater for your cron details, they've always been nice about supplying that when I've asked. There are 2 cron files on your site. There's one that is the crons that get run every day, like every morning. It's the crons daily file. And then there's the like ad hoc crons file that's anything that's scheduled to run on whatever goofy schedule you set things up for. So it's important to get both. In the chat, Barbara linked to bug 7972, add a GUI for crons. We'd love to have some GUI crons. I don't know what that means. It sounds delicious. Yeah, and I know that that's a conversation that Bywater has had at various points too, that they know folks would love to have visibility on that stuff, whether that's in Koha or in something that Bywater works out separately. And absolutely, it's a good thing to agitate for because it would be really, really helpful. Yeah, GUI crons topped with sea salt. Even if they could set up some way to like email a copy of your cron file automatically every week or something. Because yeah, for a while I was being really obsessive about every time I asked for a change to my crons, send me a new copy of it, and I stopped being that level of persnickety. I linked in the chat to GitHub for the advanced notices cron specifically. That is in the Koha community GitHub, in the folder of all of the Koha code that contains most of the cron jobs. If you're ever looking to poke around and see what cron jobs are available and what they all can do, it's a very helpful folder. Yeah, I keep it bookmarked and I go back there often. Make sure though that you are looking at the cron for the version of Koha you're on. I think I lazily linked you to the master version of advanced notices. In fact, here, why don't I be helpful and share my screen? So
most of the crons, the documentation in the community documentation isn't horrible.
Yeah.
Some of it is a little out of date, but there are a few crons that are not included in there that are custom. Particularly Bywater has a couple of custom crons.
So this is in the Koha community repo, Koha MISC cron jobs. There are a few that are broken out into subfolders. And then most of these are just a list of jobs. So here is advanced notices. This is the job that gets set on your system to run to generate your due and pre-due notices. Right now we're looking at this cron as it exists in master, but I can change that to 2111. This is advanced notices, the 2111 version. And as I scroll down, there's a lot of like code that I don't particularly know how to read, but you do get down to options. You can run it with help. You can run it with manual. But yeah, the important one here is digest per branch, flagged to indicate that generation of messages digest should be performed separately for each branch. And yeah, that sounds like the thing Brendan was describing. And now to make your cron start doing that, you'd have to ask Bywater to update the cron line in the file, and then that change would be active like the next day. There's no easy way to test what that's gonna do. If you have a test site on which you have command line access, I suppose you could run the cron for funsies on your test site. There are a lot of situations in which Koha does not give us great tools to see what sort of notices will be generated to our patrons before the notices are generated. So that's cool. Mike asked, how do we turn off advanced notice of items due? We use the auto renewal notices to, 1, notify patrons of what was auto renewed, and 2, what could not be renewed and due soon. We still want the items due day of notices being sent.
I think you can just delete that template. If there's no template, then there's no notice.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you really, really don't want to ever send the pre-due, just delete the notice. Delete the pre-due and the pre-due digest out of the notices tool. And
I don't think that one is deletable.
That actually, you could delete all the contents out of it. It might not let you do that either. The other option is to change the borrower messaging preferences. So there's one system preference that says yes or no, do allow due and pre-due notices together, and there's no way to like break those apart. And I don't believe there's any way in the cron to say do these but not those. So you would have to edit all of those patrons to set them to not get the pre-due notice anymore.
Yeah, we can probably have Bywater run a quick query to do that. We hid that option from that preference grid, but some have been set to that previously.
For a long time, there were not great options for bulk editing borrower messaging preferences. I don't know if that is still the case or not. At one point, really, Bywater's only capability was to take all of your patrons and set them to their category defaults, rather than making like a specific edit, like turn off pre-due. It's just take them all, set them to category defaults, thereby erasing any individual changes users may have made.
Yeah, we're too deep into that now.
But it's possible they have new and better tools for that. I don't know.
Okay, well, I will ponder this.
I mean,
I'm gonna try though removing the text of it.
And I suppose even if it gets really fussy and demands that you have some text in there, you could use template toolkit to put in text that won't ever exist. Like if it just needs something in there.
Yeah, I think you could do like if false and then like text and then end, and then it will always be false, so it won't send.
If up equals down.
We kind of have that for one of our, like the auto renewal things. We have like template toolkit that says if everything's too soon, or if everything is not too soon, then send the notice. And then it just doesn't even send at all if everything's too soon. So in principle, the same should work here.
I'm looking at the pre-due notice right now, and there has to be one configured for all libraries, and it has to have content. But yeah, it would be really easy to do a template toolkit that says, you know, if the patron's name is, or, you know, if anything is equal to something that can exist, then send blank.
So does that that doesn't send a blank notice though, right?
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay,
if there's no content in the message body, it won't send anything. So you just got to write a template toolkit that if then statement that'll never be true.
That's good to know.
Yeah, blanking out the content of a notice to make it not send can be helpful in various places. We do something like that for our overdue notices so that we can send emails to the people who want emails and text messages to the people who want text messages, but not 2 notices to anybody. So our overdues all check, like, if you have a text number, do the text and not the email.
This is a template toolkit bug related to notices, since we're talking about notices, that
Sure.
I just remembered, and I don't remember the bug number. But template toolkit currently can't access any extended borrower attributes you've set up. So it would be nice if, you know, if there was a borrower attribute that you wanted to include in a notice. Currently, there's no way for Koha to really grab that. And I'll look for the bug, but there is a bug to extend those, to get those into template toolkit notices.
That sounds handy. It's not hard to imagine a situation in which you'd want different wording for a notice based on something that's denoted in an attribute. Like, I don't know, maybe you've got a bunch of public school students loaded into your public library and they get really different notices because they're through the school.
I actually had a weird thing with my overdue notices. I was trying to convert them to convert all the hungry alligators to template toolkit, and confirmed with Lucas, but this was last week when they were on their retreat. But my new overdue template with all the template toolkits prevented all overdue notices from being sent. So I had to revert to, and so I have no idea. I mean, it just seems a little
That's
petty
you know,
basic.
That's why I mentioned at the conference that we all need to be asking for better documentation on template toolkit for notices, because it's really hard to figure out what hungry alligator syntax translates into template toolkit and how to get it in there. There's no good list of there's no good resource for guiding us through that.
I strongly agree, and I don't feel like we have a lot of people to ask.
Yeah, that's the only resource really I know of is Lucas. Everybody else, you know, when I ask questions about template toolkit, they always end up referring me back to Lucas, and not just when I ask Bywater people.
Yeah.
One thing that I've like, sometimes the tables are just labeled differently. So like, I forget which one it is, but like in the hungry alligators syntax, the table is borrowers with an S, but in template toolkit, it's borrower with no S. So it could be like something tiny like that.
Items becomes item in a lot of cases, and there's all kinds of things like that where it's just one letter off.
And then I think it was Lucas probably when he was helping get me started on one of those templates, was that it's okay to have both the hungry alligator syntax and the template toolkit in your template, but don't put the hungry alligators inside of a template toolkit tag. So like you can have both of them in the template, but don't nest the hungry alligators inside of any template toolkit tags.
Yeah, he said the same thing pretty much for like, because basically we wanted to get rid of the timestamp and the due date of our overdue notices, or anywhere really. And so I was trying to use koha dates to rewrite the due date. And what they said was you couldn't use the template toolkit within the item like tags item and then slash item, like that loop. Yet there is template toolkits. If you look at that old Odoo template for branches, so it's working there, but it's not working for the dates.
That tag you mentioned there, the item tag is only available in a couple of notices, and it's very customized, and it's easy to break. And it's not well documented. Even the hungry alligators syntax is not, in a lot of cases, not well documented. So a lot of that documentation was done by Barton Chittenden, who used to work for Bywater, but it's been like, you know, that was 5 years ago since he left. So
Yeah, at least.
About that. And I did find the bug I was referencing, and I stuck it in that chat box there. It's 30657 is about bringing the patron extended attributes into template toolkits notices.
I was all excited to put myself as a CC on it, and then realized I filed it a year ago. Oh well. And Jason put another bug there, 34472, that is just a bug to say we need documentation for template toolkit. I do believe the guy who that bug is currently assigned to, I think he actually like assigned it to himself in the not too distant past, so that's a good sign. He may actually be thinking about it. We're a bit over time. I'm not in any immediate hurry. The furnace repair person has not arrived. It's 59 degrees. The sun's out. Does anyone have any closing thoughts? Last minute emergencies. Whose koha's on fire right now? Hearing no screams or protestations? I think then that's it for this meeting of the koha-US Systems Administration Special Interest Group. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you the same time next month. Goodbye.
Thank you, guys.